Sorry, my camera's like,
It keeps auto-focusing.
yeah. All right. So I guess it's going to be a little bit of my blurred self. I may switch cameras in a minute, but we are at week 26 of the Tesla Beat podcast. We have Joe, the San Joaquin Valley president, and NorCal Reno president as well. We have our supply chain exec and expert, the Jeff Lutz. Amy, hopefully, will be joining soon. So, we will add her in once she joins. And then we have a special guest. As we all know, I'm going to change my camera in a minute, but as we all know, the Optimus video was showed last week. And, we're just talking, we're not even a year away from Tesla AI Day. And it is incredible to see the how fast Tesla has moved on this robot. And we're going to discuss all of that with Dr. Scott Walter, who has become a very known face in the Tesla community, especially when it comes to Optimus. So, Scott, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and, how you even got involved in the Tesla community specifically, or if you, just was it the bot that got you into a lot of these conversations, or were you an owner before? But yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, good morning, John, Joe, and Jeff. Thanks for inviting me on. It's a pleasure to be able to join you. Yeah, so my name is Scott Walter, Walter as in Isaacson. Okay, I know sometimes it gets a bit confused. And yeah, I've been a Tesla shareholder and, Tesla shareholder before I finally got the car because I was sort of getting Osborne there. And I finally bought one when Hertz decided to order 100,000. I thought, oh my goodness, I'll never be able to get that Tesla I want. So I finally got. So I'm driving a Y, doing the FSD, and have been following a lot of the Tesla influence stuff there to sort of understand what is the business case for Tesla. My background has been over 4 decades of doing robotic simulation and factory floor simulation. So it's sort of like the supply chain inside the factory of looking at how things move around and how robots are then going to do the processes. So I know all the different brands of robots that are out there, what the kind of inverse kinematics are, and I've had to simulate humanoid type of robots in our simulation in the past. So before, yeah, I think Optimus was already announced, and then I was watching Dr. John Gibbs' Dr. Know-It-All channel, and one day I made the mistake of like joining his Patreon and getting a discussion with him, and he invited me on, and it took me actually like 2 weeks to decide, no, I want to do that. I'll put people to sleep. And then he kept on inviting me back again and again. And we started to look at the Optimus because I could see a lot of how the mechanics were going to work and was really excited about what the use cases were going to be. So yeah, that's basically my background and glad to be here and to talk about Optimus.
Yeah, great to have you. Yeah,
Yeah,
good to,
well,
yeah.
what better way, especially, you're talking one year out from Tesla AI Day. I attended with several others in person, so it was, really cool just to see all of their progress, especially the way that they had presented the bot was something kind of like not like a hacked project that they were just doing. Obviously, everything that Tesla does, it's with purpose, but it really was just something that they kind of just sprouted up and put together in a short period of time. And next thing you know, I mean, again, we're able to see really the huge impact of this bot. So before we jump into that, we're gonna just take a quick look at some of our just the top news, and we're gonna have Scott potentially chime in on any of his thoughts, and we'll just go from there. All right, so just a quick look at the stock. It's pretty much flat week over week. I believe we were hovering around this 250 range. Again, year to date, we're up 134%. And so, yeah, so I think we're just kind of, and I think, we'll have delivery numbers probably by Monday. I think that's going to be the time we'll see how the stock reacts. They'll probably release it that morning, but who knows? Maybe it comes even early, just given the market is on Monday versus on Sunday. So, but either way, very very exciting to go ending Q3 into Q4. There are some headwinds as far as like delivery numbers potentially, given they did shut down for the refresh Model 3. But again, in very Tesla fashion, we will find out on Monday. All right. So some big news this week. I think it's more of just Elon in general right now. He really, unlike any other person I think I've seen in this day and age, like there's not many other leaders or people of influence just meeting with as many other world leaders out there. And so this past, I believe it was Monday or Tuesday, Elon met with the president of Hungary, and really they I know they talked a lot about like the population collapse, but she got a full tour of the Austin factory along with a ride in the Cybertruck. I don't know, was there anything else from everyone's perspective that they shared on potentially further discussions on Tesla? Or I think that was the only two things that I really got from it.
Yeah, I didn't really see anything about like building anything out there or anything. I mean, she was pretty vocal on social media, well, on X anyway. So for the things that she posted, it was really just about getting to know him and family type stuff. She didn't really delve too much into if they had plans for anything like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Hungary's
Jeff,
I was just going to say Hungary's actually a pretty, over the last like 30 years has been a pretty powerful manufacturing center in Central Europe. A lot of electronics manufacturing, auto. So I mean, it's another really good world leader for Elon to be in contact with. And I did like a couple of things. Like the view of the new entrance into Austin. I think they're really kind of showing this off now as Tesla headquarters. It's kind of a much different experience, right, than going into like Fremont or another factory. I like the fact that he's really proud of and showing off the Cybertruck to all these world leaders over the last couple of weeks. I think it really shows that he's got really high expectations for the product, although I think he's playing it down externally, which is maybe the right thing to do when talking about the numbers. But I can tell he's pretty proud about the product. I'm really looking forward to the release and the release event where they talk through the specs. I think we're going to get surprised.
Agreed. Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, it's insane. This is like the Model Y days. Joe, you probably, Jeff, all of us probably remember all of the photos that everyone was posting as the Model Y was just imminent. And that's how it feels right now with the Cybertruck. I mean, we know there's probably like 6 around the Bay Area, but they're just, they're not intentionally trolling, but they're literally just, they're purposely driving. They're taking these places to Vegas. They're taking these cars down to Los Angeles. I mean, up to Tahoe. And sure, they're, probably going for a joyride, letting some employee go with it. But, it's also too, to just continue to just create, awareness and build up and just continue to just hype this thing, as Tesla has, or as Elon has mentioned, that this is his favorite product ever so far. So really, really exciting. I'm personally, couldn't be more excited to see more of these on the road. Yeah, I saw one yesterday with the R1S right next to each other. And so it was really cool to get that side-by-side comparison. And then I had seen one a little bit earlier, but these things are just completely unlike anything you see it on the road, especially it's just so easy to pick out because it's got that fat light bar in the front and, those fog lights, those 2 fog lights in the front. It's pretty futuristic in its look. Yeah,
and actually, it's not just in California that they're spotted. One was spotted a couple of days ago in Florida.
Nice.
Over in the air, on the road. I mean, not on the back of a truck or something like that, but driving around near Kennedy Space Center.
Wow,
that's awesome.
I did not know that. That's awesome. Was it manufacturing license plates? Do you know?
I don't know. Someone just saw it on the road and got a couple of quick pictures of it as it went by, but it was on the 528.
That's awesome.
Near on actually Merritt Island, which is where Port Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center is there. So make of it what you want.
Yeah, a couple of these execs are getting these release candidates. I'm pretty sure they signed whatever waiver, just like, I'll drive it.
All right. And then I was talking to Joe about this the other day. It was kind of funny. It's like, so you'll post all these videos of like the Cybertruck and like everyone, sure, they love it.
Yeah.
But actually the things that do better, it feels like, especially on some of the other platforms outside of X, are the semi videos. And so we were kind of talking about how it feels actually like more rare to see a Tesla semi than it is a Cybertruck right now. But here's some stats that came out that I'll pass it over to Joe to talk about.
Yeah, so there's this huge event called Run on Less where they're pitting all these vehicles, well, all the semis against each other to, just for distance and to see what's going to be the better system. And this right here, 1,076 miles is what the Tesla did with that one delivery in 24 hours. That bar on the bottom right shows that they charged 3 times. And so, I mean, this is like the greatest distance they were able to do in a single day, and it's almost 1,100 miles. It's pretty incredible to see what Tesla's been able to pull off with this vehicle, knowing that, man, this is one of the most impactful segments that could make a difference for the world and for particle
For
emissions.
emissions.
Yeah, the emissions. But I mean, particulates are like a huge thing, and trucks make up like the vast majority of particulate emissions. So for this to be one of their flagship models, and yeah, you don't see it as much, and I know they're still working on some things, but man, once this starts to ramp up, it's going to be a game changer.
Yeah, I think the stat was like 80% of the emissions, at least in the US or the world, are from trucking.
Yep.
So the fact that they're tackling this, I mean, it's the biggest, bigger than the automotive industry, just because of the amount. Like you get on the 5 out in Stockton or out in Tracy, and it is just, there's so many. Like if you're going north, you're going to drop something off. If you're going south, you're pretty much unloaded and you just see the truck bare. But it's pretty incredible to see these things in the wild. I saw 2 of them. I was going to Joe's event the other day, and I literally saw 2 semis towing 2 things up, and unfortunately I couldn't get a video of it, but it was cool to see 2 of them out there, in the wild, just working. And they weren't Pepsi. They didn't look like they were Pepsi incorporated, or wrapped. So I wasn't sure if it was Tesla specifically or maybe another company, but it was pretty incredible to see them.
Yeah, Tesla has like 3 different versions of that. They have like 3 different versions of that. They have like a mid, a long, and another one just for like uh, short jaunts. But to do almost 1,100 miles, which I mean, as a lot of people know, they claim that, oh, this is not. It should be some other fuel system that could do this. But I mean, Tesla's proven that batteries can do it. So
Yep. So I know I'm just keeping an eye on time.
yeah,
But yeah, let's just we'll keep pounding here. So the Model S is finally being delivered in Japan. So that's really exciting, especially as I know a lot of owners there have been waiting a very long time, almost 2 years for deliveries to start happening. So we think sometimes we wait longer in the US. Some of these other places are very long. Like in this case, we'll be waiting a little bit longer for the refresh in North America, but other parts of the world like China and Europe and APAC, those areas are getting the refresh a little bit sooner than we are. So cool to see this happening. The diner is officially coming. So, Scott, when you make it out this way, again, this is LA, but the Hollywood Supercharger, they're finally constructing the diner and the drive-in theater, which is really cool. So that's just something to kind of keep an eye out. I'm really excited just because in California, the best supercharger is the Kettleman City one. And so this is going to be a site to stop by and see. Here, I think this is just some more news. Tesla to face EU anti-subsidy probe over China exports. Again, I think I don't know how important this is per se, or what the thoughts are on this exactly, but just some other headliners that are happening this week. The UAW strike. Jeff, I don't know if I know you've been watching this pretty closely, if you have any thoughts, but I think this was as of, I believe, yesterday. The UAW, the union wants to emerge from its strikes against Detroit's 3 major automakers with at least 30% pay raise, down from the 40%. But Jeff, did you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this stuff, I don't know what's been confirmed or not. I mean, they're in the middle of negotiations, and it's much more than just their wages. It's a cost of living adjustments, it's pensions, it's 4-day work week, it's plant closures. It's probably those are 5 of the biggest areas, and also kind of this quote unquote just transition to EV and how that's going to be managed. So it's expanding. This morning they're announcing Ford and GM expansions. Actually, the Ford plant, so almost like it's over 6,000 people in Chicago, is going on strike. I think at noon today. So maybe I'll take a ride over there in the Model X and get some video for the community. Anyway, it's not a good thing. It's continuing to expand, it's continuing to escalate. I think this can go on for a while. Again, these 5 areas are much. Everybody thinks like there's some convergence happening with wages and everything just goes away. I think the bigger issues are actually going to be the other areas, and also kind of what does this mean? Like once they get to an agreement, like what does it mean for these companies in year 1, 2, and 3 post agreement? They were already struggling to produce a profitable EV this decade. What does this do? You saw Ford made a move this week as well to stop construction and progress on the cattle plant that they were building in Michigan, and I think there's a lot more actually happening here than just this particular negotiation, but everything that's happening relative to this negotiation is really pushing them out on EV further. So I think there's kind of a political thing, there's kind of a psyche thing happening, and then there's an actual there's an economics thing happening, and they're all working together. The economics piece is going to actually be one of the bigger issues to deal with going forward, because Tesla's and others they're moving in another direction in terms of, it's not only everybody thinks of Tesla, I think of automation. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but it's actually like they're actively deleting parts. This thing with GigaPress, this is a big deal in terms of the number of components involved to make the body mechanics on a car. And it's well beyond automation. They're actually getting ahead of automation, saying, how can I get rid of parts that I don't even need to automate or touch with a humanoid robot? And these companies are many years behind that. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think the one other thing before we jump into the bot, I just wanted to mention, I had posted a tweet the other day, just confirming, I think people were continuing to ask, is the Plaid Model 3 coming? And I think obviously in very Elon fashion, he kind of changes the subject and just responds, I just drove the performance Cybertruck today and it kicks ass, next level. So now everyone's like, what does the Cybertruck performance mean? Which is interesting, because I thought that would just be the highest variant. Maybe they're just calling it performance, or I don't think that they're going to be making another variant. I think they're going to have just 2 or 3. But we already know that they've talked about how the Cybertruck will be faster than a Porsche 911. But either way, it's just exciting. I don't know. Did anyone have any thoughts on what this? I mean, obviously, there's tons of rumors, of course, but was there any thoughts on what this may mean?
Yes, it means I'm really glad that my reservation number is 1,300,000, because by the time they get to me, probably the performance variant will be out there.
Nice.
Yeah. Jeff or Joe, any thoughts?
You know, I really don't have much to say because there's a lot of times people try to read into what Elon says, and most of the time it just take him for his word. And he means that he test drove a performance. That's what he means. There will be no plaid version. I think that's ridiculous to even think about. I mean, that's reserved for like S and X. It just makes sense. Like there's no need for a plaid version Cybertruck. But yeah, I think just take him at his word. He drove a performance and it kicks ass.
Yep.
I think he's really proud of the performance of the product. Yeah. And I think that's very meaningful, given the performance of other Tesla products. So, yeah. And I think part of the delay is not only getting 4680s right and everything else that Tesla is doing with the Cybertruck, but it's also getting the performance manufacturing together. So I think we're going to get positively surprised at the launch event in terms of the specs of this product.
Yeah, I mean, him showing that to world leaders, like you said, Jeff, is just one of those things that, I mean, he is really proud of this, and I think that says something. I mean, he wasn't out giving rides to people in Model Ys, and that's like selling, like, you know what I mean? Like it's a game changer for like the industry, and he just is like really head over heels for the Cybertruck. But I think for him, like it looks like Tesla could design this. Like there's so many vehicles, and we see all of the what do you call them, the concept vehicles, and nothing ever looks like the concept vehicle. And Tesla makes things that look otherworldly and look like what the concept comes out as. And I mean, this is just, I mean, it looks like the future. When you think about the future, it really looks like the future. I know a lot of people is not really a fan of it, but I mean, it is what it is. I mean, only Tesla could make this. Like, only Tesla would make this.
I agree on both points. Yeah, no, I would say that's one thing that is different about this truck, is that he is showcasing it to a lot of world leaders. You know, obviously, I mean, it's almost like in some ways, like it's like the Model S back when the Model S was going to launch, or even the Roadster. It was just, you know, it was such a advanced thing of its time. Like the Roadster, I mean, you would see him out giving rides on that, at least during the launch events, and trying to sell cars. And same thing with the Model S. And this is, you know, he's obviously at a different level now, where he is in some ways seen as a world leader. He's meeting with people. He's actually having impacts in various initiatives in humanity. So, but all of these people that are coming, I mean, the Israel prime minister was here a couple weeks ago, and he's giving rides to him in Fremont. So it's pretty incredible.
Yeah, there's going to be a fundamental shift, I think, in the auto industry, like how the iPhone was. Like there's going to be a world before Cybertruck, and there's going to be a world after Cybertruck. This is gonna, like, seriously, there's going to be, you're going to start to see a design change. Like other OEMs are going to start to realize, like, oh man, we can take a risk, you know what I mean? And people will appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm glad we were able to get through a lot of the top news. And sorry, Jeff, I played a little bit of the video because I got kicked out earlier, so all the stuff I had pre-uploaded, so didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to make sure that we had the video so we can show it. But before we get into that, I think I just wanted to show the tweet. So optimistic about Optimus. Thank you, Jeff, for the cool headliner there. But Optimus can now sort objects autonomously. Its neural network is trained fully end-to-end, video in, controls out. And I'll show the video right now too. All right. So, yeah, I think obviously that for me, when I saw that, that was just truly incredible because, again, we saw the Tesla AI Day event a year ago. But again, this conversation is not about me. We brought in an expert, Dr. Scott Walter. We would love to just get your impressions. What did you think? What did you see? And just tell us a little bit about potentially what this means. But again, we'll get into all of that. I have some slides. I think you saw them. So if you want me to resort to those slides, feel free to just let me know. But what were your initial thoughts when you saw this video last week?
Yeah, well, the first thing I want to correct you there, John, it wasn't a year ago. It was a year ago minus 1 day. So tomorrow is officially the day that it's been 1 year. And to look at that kind of progress, one of the things I was sort of curious about is like, why now? Why did they drop that video on Saturday? What was it kind of connected around? And if you look at the tweet, you'll see the last thing is, please come join us. And then, oh, by the way, there's about, I think, 54 openings on the Tesla job site for Optimus, and you can go in, you can start opening up and reading and getting an idea of what it is they're looking for. So they're getting to the point that they're getting ready to scale because they have something that's out there and they want the excitement around. It's like, look what we were able to do in, not quite a year. So a year ago, we saw a walking prototype. Okay, that was a development platform, and that they showed that they had kind of mastered it. They could figure out how to walk and do a few things. And we could even see there was like an image in there of it taking a part out of a station in the Fremont factory and moving it around. So they know they could demonstrate it could do some sort of operations that are already staffed on the factory floor. But the actual next generation platform came out and we could see it moving its arms and legs, but it couldn't walk yet. And they promised us that within a few weeks it would be walking. And a lot of people were probably like, yeah, right, it's going to be walking. Well, then we see by February, it already is walking. And not only that, it's starting to put together another Optimus. Now that was a little bit staged and everything, yet you could see it was more than walking. It was dealing with tools and all these other things and grabbing these parts and coordinating. One of them was putting it up there while the other one was able to go in and fasten it. So you're already seeing some amazing things, but at that point, most of it was sort of heuristic code to get it to go around. And then they did a rewrite like they've done with FSD 12 to go pure vision in, nets and then output to everything. So when you start doing that, you start getting much better motion. And that is like one of the things we're seeing. It's like, boy, it's not just walking, it's got incredible balance. The balance part did not really shock me because we already saw a preview of that in the shareholder when they showed the torque control that they had and the leg going up and down. And then the egg goes underneath and it doesn't break the egg because it's able to react that quickly. So when I saw that, it's like, oh, wow, there's probably going to be some interesting things they're going to do. I just don't know what it is they're going to do with it. And so seeing that was not a surprise. And the whole body moves around. So, I mean, I'm going around here with my hand. It's like my legs and everything are kind of in there. I'm not like stiff doing this, which is what most robots would be doing. I'm actually reacting to it in a natural way. And that's what you're beginning to see in Optimus. You can only do that with a really good neural net system, not something that you're going to be writing heuristic code to be able to imitate that. So that is absolutely amazing. And then of course, seeing how it's able to sort of change its mind on what its goal was, just like FSD. I'm driving down the road and this car suddenly pulls out in front of me while I react. Does that mean I stop going to my goal? No, I just make sure I don't bump into it and continue on. In that case, you'll see the human was coming in there and moving the block around and it was like, oh, well, I've got to go over there to get it. So that is something that's also rather amazing to see how quickly it was able to change its decision logic to do that. And so those are kind of my first impressions is like why I think it was more recruiting than convincing us what's going on. Because while we all yearn for an update, the updates are always around some event. And the event was like Investor Day, Shareholder Day. The last time we got a video that wasn't around anything was last December. And it was a little bit of a behind the scenes. And it was like, please join us. Please come and join us. And then finally, I want to say, it's like, I assume you all read the Walter Isaacson's book and a couple of chapters in there about Optimus. And when you first read about it, it's like, wait a minute. This is a rather interesting team they assembled. It's not like all the experts around the world in building humanoid robots. These are people who know absolutely nothing about building a humanoid robot. How are they going to pull this off? And they pulled it off exactly because they weren't experts. They went to first principles. They looked at it. They figured out how to do it. They're a really good team. So it kind of started out as like the bad news bears. It's like, oh my goodness, they're like these, and then, they figured out what they were doing. And then with a short period of time, they got something together that could walk a little bit. It would fall over, it would turn its head, and that would be enough for it to lose its balance. But they learned to get to this point. And again, 1 year minus 1 day. And we are seeing something like that.
Yeah, no, it was truly incredible just to see it happen. And I think it goes back to even just how Tesla is tackling these issues where they're going back to first principles. It doesn't matter how previous bots were made. They're not bringing in all these experts or hiring the top robotic engineers. They already have the top engineers. I've met them. I mean, a lot of them are just, when they'll drop the college that they went to, it's really incredible. But just to see their improvement is absolutely insane. I know we have some images from actuators, but I don't know. Do we want to talk about like how this bot will be trained? Maybe that's different from your perspective of how other bots like the Boston Dynamics one are being trained, or if it's all similar. Like, how is this like? When you think of like robotics in general versus like potentially others in the industry, how is this different?
Okay, so if you really go back to the way industrial robots are, is that you have to do lead through teach, and you teach it point by point, and it basically does a replay. Hey, Amy, nice to see you. Thanks
Hi
for joining
there.
us.
Welcome.
So industrial robots are lead through teach, where they record the positions and they just play them back. And they're very faithful at doing that, but they don't really understand what they're doing. That just happens to work. And they literally are operating blind. So they close their eyes and they know that they expect some object to be there, and it just goes over and then gets the object and picks it up because it's been taught that's where the object is. And that's what we typically call proprioception. And that's what industrial robots have. They have the ability to know where they are in space because you just give them the right joint values. It keeps going to the same joint value. It will go to the same location in space. But if that bottle's not there, if it's over here, it's going to miss it completely. So then you have to make sure that you set up your lines that bottle is locked in right where it's supposed to be so the robot knows how to pick it up. Humans, of course, are very good at being able to adapt with that because we have eyes to be able to do it. And yes, you can take an industrial robot cell and you can set up some cameras in there to be able to move them around. But it's a lot of typing and stuff like that and writing the code and moving it. And it's a bit tedious. For Optimus, it is going to be more of you give it examples, demonstrations. So it seems like they're using a lot of different sources to initially feed it, simulation being one of it, doing kind of this telerobotic operation where they have someone strapped up to move around to teach some of these movements. And then finally, Optimus is going to start studying video and looking at what you're doing and adapting and using the normal kind of language models to do it. Now, there's a lot of questions out there exactly what kind of language models are being used. It's probably going to be similar to what the Google RT1 robot is doing, that using some video in to figure it out. So that's my expectation. And then at some point, it will have such a good understanding of how to do certain things that you will just give it a very simple command. You'll just say, Optimus, I want you to do this. So there will be a large language model and it will interpret that and break it down into all the necessary steps. Just like when we drive in the car, we give it a destination. We don't tell it all the back roads and everything you have to drive to get there. The navigator is able to figure it out. So the same thing, it will be able to do that. And the other way is, rather than telling it, maybe it'll just be, Optimus, come over here, watch me. And you do a few things and it goes, oh, okay, I get it. I'll go ahead and do that. So that's where I expect they're going to be. And the thing is, we got to make sure that the mechanics and the brains are kind of on equal footing, because at some point the brain's going to be so good, it's going to be, hey, I need better hands. To start to do what you want, get me a better set of hands. And there's going to be improvements in that and improvements in the actuators as you go along.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things is post-training for me is one of the things you're constantly doing when you've designed a line and you're operating that line in the factory and you've engineering support. What you're trying to do is to get your cost structure down. You're trying to make stations go faster, be more efficient, use less time per station, and also have a better quality level per station, so you're not reworking. So this whole concept of once it's trained, can it get better? If it's doing a station in 18 seconds, will you be able to tell Optimus, okay, can you figure out how to do this in 15 seconds without, degrading your quality level? I think for me, like, this is where it's not only this one thing of like labor's, there's going to be this ramp up of humanoid robots that replace labor. But once they're actually faster and they can do the station better, they're already, they're going to be able to work more hours and do more things. But when they can actually figure out how to improve and do better, and they can be linked from a quality perspective, I think it's going to be pretty magical from a factory perspective. It'll take a while to get to that, but I do see that as one of the big advantages that doesn't get talked about and not a lot, which is once it's trained, can it get better?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up because I heard you mention that on Herbert on Monday, and that kind of opened up my mind. It's like, oh yeah, of course, he's absolutely right that they're going to get better. And the idea is not to be faster, but to be smarter about what you're doing because you're just going to exhaust yourself. So the idea is we want to stay within whatever power requirements there are and figure out what is the finesse that you do to get it. And we know that's what happens on the floor all the time. You train up all these workers, and there's that one worker that just sort of is able to figure it out. And then you got to go and study that person. It's like, what is it that they're doing? So I could train everyone else to do that same little trick. And sometimes it's very easy and sometimes it's really hard to figure out. So I agree. Hopefully Optimus is going to do that iteration. And one other point you brought up, Jeff, which I think is really good, is that when I've tried to figure out the savings that Optimus is going to bring to the factory because of all these different operations they're going to do, and I've talked about in the past this famous video that came out in February of Shanghai Speed showing inside the Tesla factory there. Yep. Around the 18, 19 minute mark, they show an operator loading some sheet metal to the robots. You're just picking it up. It's really a very simple operation, very lightweight things. You're taking it out of a bin, which might be a bit chaotic, which is why a human does it, to bring it over to a place which is now fixed so a robot can go and do the operations. We used to have lots and lots of those things within the Tesla factories. And so I was thinking, it's like, that's a job for Optimus. The problem is Optimus is not going to take that job away. It's already been taken away by the gigacasting. And so I was like, oh, wow. So there's like 300 jobs over there that Optimus is not going to take because it's already been done. So again, you're right. Tesla is constantly reducing the parts and everything. It may be that they start putting Optimus out of a job at some point. I don't know.
For sure.
Amy, did you want to say something? Sorry, I thought you were.
Oh no, this is absolutely fascinating. I'm so glad that we got Scott on because Optimus has such potential for the company, and the Open Skies had this fantastic tweet showing the pace of innovation that there is on Optimus and how incredible it is. And Martin Vieca responded to it, and I think it's even hard for those of us that watch Tesla closely to keep up with the pace of development on Optimus. So I'm really glad that we have Scott here talking about it.
Yeah, I think for myself, just some of the stuff you're talking about, I feel like a lot of the stuff that I see through full self-driving, I'm using, I think it's 11.4.7.2 right now. But just as you said, hey, Optimus, watch me wash these dishes and just see, right? And then just train it. Or, hey, when you pick up a pot, this is how you scrub out all of the stuff versus a plate. And that's exactly literally how the car is trained. It's like, hey, when you're going through a light and there is, it only shows green and like for an unprotected left-hand turn, right? Like this is what you do. And that's how you fix it. And I think that's what is probably the craziest part about the way that Tesla is building full self-driving, the way that they're going to be building this neural network and these bots, and is the fact that they're building a foundation that can pretty much handle anything. It's just at this point, it just becomes about like how fast can they train it? What's the quality of videos that they can train it with? But yeah, it's pretty incredible. I know we touched a little bit on the cost, but I don't know if Scott and Jeff, if you want to just dive into how.
Well, real quick before we get into cost, I wanted to say that one of the things that we keep talking about is training it over programming it. You know what I mean? And I think that's a really big thing. You know what I mean? Like everybody wants to make the comparison of Boston Dynamics. Well, Boston Dynamics does all those things because it's pre-programmed to do those things. And yeah, that's great for a show. But what you're looking at with Optimus is something that was taught. And I think that the brain aspect of Optimus is what's going to set it apart from anything else. Also, besides the fact that, as we know, Tesla is a manufacturing freaking behemoth. So they're making this robot to sell. they're not making it, you know what I mean, to sit around for 30 years, you know what I mean, in their confines of their factory, and nobody will ever see it on the streets. You know what I mean? Like Boston Dynamics has been around for 30 years, and you can't buy one. You know what I mean? Like, and Tesla doesn't move that way. And so I think like there's a lot of the pieces of the puzzle that are just coming to fruition. I mean, nobody had Tesla Robotics on their bingo card in 2015, or, you know what I mean? Like, and here we are. So.
Yeah, maybe James Dalma did, but I don't think anyone else.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe James did.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, I agree that you're going to see a lot of rapid movement in there. And when you look at the cost structure, I'm glad Jeff is on here because he'll kind of give us an idea. I've tried to put together a spreadsheet to figure that out. And the first thing, just to make sure everyone's been paying attention. So Joe, you said you've watched a couple of my videos when I've been on Dr. Know-It-All. Do you know how many actuators are actually in the Tesla bot?
No.
Okay, so
a lot.
It's a total of 40. So there's 6 in each hand because 2 for each thumb, and you have and then you take that away, you've got the 28 structural actuators that are going to make up the rest of it. So that's 40 actuators. And the question comes down, how much is it going to cost to produce each actuator? Jeff might be able to give us a better estimate. I mean, I'm not quite sure where it is. I think the Model 3 motors with the gearbox and everything, don't they say it's going to be around $1,000 or something like that? I think that's more complex.
The next generation, yeah.
Right. So I think that's more complex than what's going into Optimus. So that's like the higher end right there. It's like, oh, if we got 40 of them, that's $40,000 right there just to build an Optimus. But I don't think it's 1,000 a piece. It could be down as low as 100. And so when I put that in my spreadsheet and I say, if the actuators can be as low as $100 a piece, I have a really, really hard time getting up to $10,000. I mean, I'm trying to say, well, wait a minute, this is going to cost more. It's like, I'm looking at it, it's like, only $7,000, you're going to be kidding. There's something wrong here. Oh, the actuators are a little bit more. So just to give you an idea of the range, James Dalma said that the way you bracket it's like, it can't be more complicated than a Model 3. So it's not going to cost more than a Model 3. The question is, how low can you go? And as low as you can go is if you melt that thing down into its constituent atoms, because they said, we're not going to build it from carbon fiber and titanium because it's too expensive. It's mostly going to be aluminum and other, a little bit of copper here, some iron and everything else. You're talking about like $150 worth of atoms. That's it. So that's not a whole lot. The most complex thing in there outside the actuators is the FSD chip, which, I mean, that's known how to be made. Okay, so I can't make that in my basement, but just about everything else that goes into Optimus, I could almost make that stuff in my basement. Including some of the boards, you just go out and buy the right chips and you can put that together. And then you just go ahead and automate the whole thing and it'll be very fast. So structurally, mechanically, everything is really simple to put together. It's easy to manufacture. It's easy to service. There's not a whole lot of complex parts. So right there, you're saying Elon said under $20,000. And I believe him because I've gone in, I've checked out the numbers and I can't get up that high except for what the guess is on the actuators. So Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you have the right approach when we encounter these situations. Like you look at you have to look at the like upper bounding, upper and lower bounding, the extremes, and actually look at the material. It's not only like, is it aluminum or is it steel? Like, what alloys are they actually using? So there's a lot of unknowns that we just don't know yet, and we don't know the tolerances on these actuators as well. I think once we start understanding that and the yields, you can start putting together a decent cost model. But I agree with the like upper bounding this, and the way Tesla operates is they start with this feature value trade-off and really a tops down COGS target on a product. They don't just let it like it is what it is. By the way, there's a lot of companies that kind of operate that way of like, we want it to look like this, and whatever the COGS are, let's see what the COGS are. I think Tesla really has the COGS and the feature value trade-off on equal footing in their product development process. It's called the design for cost process, and I believe that's tops down. It's injected very early, and so yeah, I think you do start with exactly what you're looking at. Is like which component has the highest part count and is kind of the most custom, and you start looking at and how do you do cost models on that. So yeah, I think well below 20,000. This is going to be one of those things where you have to kind of take volume out of the way in the beginning and just really get to really understand just it's if you're building one unit, what do you think the cost structure is? And then once you scale it, that's what's really exciting for me is when I looked at those 58 job openings, I mean they're going to hire those probably over, if they're fast, over a 4 to 6 month time span, and they're basically ramping up. That's an operation to take it out of Palo Alto and to build larger sample sizes in a manufacturing environment so they can continue with the development activities and expand it further. And what that tells me is that we're pretty close to needing to put orders on very long lead suppliers and very long lead capex. And now you can start blending the auto conversation with suppliers, the auto contract conversations with suppliers, and the bot conversations. And Tesla already has a very exciting auto roadmap, including, where's the Cybertruck going to scale to? What's this Gen 3 vehicle going to scale to? And now you layer this bot piece where you have the CEO out there talking, numbers in, the 8 billion range. And if you're a leader in supply chain, you've got an incredible story to come in with suppliers just on auto alone, but then you layer this on top. So I think you can kind of do a cost buildup of what are the materials, what's involved. But I think there's going to be this whole other thing of like, what is the economic impact of the bot on Tesla? Not only like what does it do for labor in their factory, but what does it actually do to their sourcing leverage in the entire industry? I think this is going to be such a unique situation for one company to have all of this. They're going to be on the same level in terms of leverage as an Apple and some of the biggest companies in the world now with this.
Yeah, the supply chain, holy cow. That's, I mean, they are entering I can't wait for people to start talking about the monopoly effect that Tesla's having. They are just touching on so many industries, and you know what I mean? Like eventually, I mean, that people are going to want them to stop their successes because they just keep. I've never seen a company reinvent itself and try to disrupt its own business as much as Tesla does. At every turn they're like, we can do better. You know what I mean? We can do something else. It's insane.
Yeah, what I'm really looking forward to is, as these supply chain deals go in place, we're going to have a lot more information about Optimus cost. There's one Tesla supplier in China that is already disclosing on their quarterly reports that they're building a whole new robotics division, an actuator division for a large client. So they're not specifying Tesla, but this is what we're going to start seeing, this type of information happening, where it's the suppliers are getting in position, building up new factories, new divisions, and they have to disclose that. So we're going to start to find more information. And what they've been asked to do, according to their report, is to supply 2 actuators in the kind of a unit volume of 10,000 to start, 100,000 going forward. And they've already sent back and forth multiple samples with this unnamed client, which I would say that the very good chance is Tesla, because who else is out there building a bot, working on a pilot production line at this moment, right?
General Motors.
Well, no.
But as Jeff would say, it shows the design to manufacturing in this process that already they're trying to fine tune these actuators with a supplier and sending back and forth multiple samples and trying to get a pilot production line up as they're stealth training. The bot is just going to be such a powerful way to produce a product that other manufacturers aspire to, but they're certainly not doing it on the same level that Tesla is.
But doesn't Tesla make their own motors? So wouldn't they be making their own actuators? Do you think they're going to go to
I was just going to get into that. I mean, I think there's going to be, this could be not all actuators are created equal. And this could be also it could be some sub-assemblies or materials that they're working with some suppliers on, but they may do final assembly on part or all of the 28 to 40 actuators. that's one question, open question. My gut is that they would figure out they would want to do final assembly internally, but in terms of they may be doing this could be sub assemblies, this could be at some other level that they could be working on a supplier agreement as well. So
for
it's going
windings
to be
or something
interesting.
else. So I
Yeah.
just wonder how much does Tesla need their suppliers to put together the Model 3 motors or the Plaid? Is that all internally? And the other thing is I can think of two companies that might be wanting those actuators. One of them would be Agility, because they just announced that they're going to be setting up a factory to do 10,000 bots a year. And you also have, as a response to the Tesla video and to Agility, Fourier came out and said, no, wait, we've got the first humanoid bot factory. And they're very proud of the kind of actuators that they've designed. I don't know if they're going to be building those internally or if they're also thinking of getting them from a supplier. So you might have to be careful. My feeling is that almost everything is going to be vertically integrated within Tesla. And I don't know how much comes in from the outside, except for the FSD chip that's coming from where Samsung or TSMC. So it's kind of hard to, you're really trying to figure out who's going to be a supplier, because Optimus is so easy. The castings, are they going to have a sub supplier to do the castings on the arms and the legs, or is that something that Tesla has the competence to do internally? They could, injection molding. Do they go to some injection molding shop, or is that something they do internally? So I was assuming that they were going to be doing the whole actuator line internally, and of course the batteries they don't have to worry about because they're producing those things. And the number of batteries I figured out as far as the cost model, there's 140 2170s in there, and if I go to Amazon to buy them, that would cost me about $800. So I'm sure Tesla is able to get a slightly better rate.
It could be a blend, right? Because they're gonna know the cost. I don't have to get too far deep into this detail, but you're talking you said there's 40 actuators, Scott. I mean,
okay, yeah,
say they
40,
get the
40,
5
40
or 10
per,
million
40
a year.
bot. Yes.
5 or 10 million units a year. You're starting to look at the sheer volume and manufacturing space that's needed, and then now you start as a manufacturer, you start thinking about the utilization of that space. But anyway, we can go the make versus buying actuators. I mean, I would be leaning on them building them, but at the same time, I could see them sourcing sub assemblies on the outside too. It's all going to come down to what is the value in that component? Is there any intellectual property, and basically, can they get the cost structure to a level where if they outsource or they insource, the efficiencies or the labor rates in areas that they could outsource to, or places where they don't have a plant today? And again, it's a very long, wonky conversation, but I actually think like what they do in batteries today. Remember, they're not doing most of their own volume at the cell level. I could see them having a manufacturing presence for most of these components, but also working with suppliers as well, because they can actually help set the pricing when they're doing assembly themselves. But I think getting back to like the higher level here of this, I liked what you were talking about in terms of the motion of the robot smoothing out. And could you talk a little bit more about that and kind of where you see that? Like, if they were gonna shoot another video 3 months from now, what do you think they're gonna have the robot doing?
I assume in 3 months they're going to be showing us doing an actual activity in a plant somewhere, so that we really see that it is doing something. And in a sense, at that point, they might be showing it not as that we're demonstrating it's doing it, but it's actually doing it. It's helping to build a car, because we know it's already done a bunch of those things. Last year we saw in the video, it was doing an operation in the Fremont factory, but that was probably more for demonstration than anything else. It actually hasn't worked a shift. So I imagine we'd be seeing something like that. And whether they want to start showing more exotic things beyond yoga, whether it's really doing gymnastics or something like that, that's possible. But here's my prediction. We're not going to have to wait 3 months to see something next. If you think about it, at this point, the public at large has only ever seen the development version walking. Everything else has been through a videotape. So we saw the new generation come out and just, do this and a couple of movement, and then it was off the stage and that was it. Everything else has been a video. So no one has done a sighting of Optimus in the wild like we have with the Cybertruck. But there's a couple of breadcrumbs out here right now, and that is, first, why did they drop this kind of close to the Cybertruck event? And when was the last time we saw a video with Optimus? Remember?
Yeah,
And
he's walking in front of the Cybertrucks.
there were 5 Optimi walking in front of the Cybertruck. So my feeling is that the Cybertruck event, Optimus is probably going to escort the Cybertruck out onto stage. Now, I don't know what it does after that, but that's my prediction. Optimus will then be seen, and then everyone will say, wait, we saw Optimus walking. It wasn't a video.
Right.
It wasn't CGI. It wasn't all this other stuff. So at that point, it's like the whole world, and just think about it. We know it's going to be spectacular. You know, there's going to be these drone flyovers and all this other stuff. They want to do something. The only question right now is they're going to say, well, wait a minute. If we do that, is the headline going to be the next day all about Optimus and not about the Cybertruck?
I think that's irrelevant. I think the Cybertruck is going to stand on its own regardless.
Yeah. And then what's Optimus going to do? Optimus is not going to drive it in. It's definitely not going to drive it in. It's going to escort it, because Optimus can't actually get in the driver's seat. It can't bend its neck because it doesn't have anything around the neck, and it doesn't have enough torso. And the other thing everyone says when it's like, oh, you're going to do that, says, wait a minute, look at Optimus for a second. That is one butt you do not want in your seat, because you put that in there and your seat's going to be all torn up. So unless they have some special cushioning for the Optimus in the backside there's no way it's getting in there. It's just kind of marching along. It's going to do whatever. And who knows, maybe it goes down and checks the tires or something like that, and, you know, cleans the windshield. Who knows? They'll come up with something that'll be rather entertaining, I'm sure, more than just walking out. But, you know, and I'm sure they'll have Optimus doing this and that and doing all the pauses.
I hope our viewers are appreciative of the detail we get to in this show. And Optimus and what key configuration they could get into. No, I think that point you raised earlier, Scott, of we're now video in and controls out. That point, I think, is one of the biggest takeaways, if not the takeaway of that video. It helped with the range. It helped to smooth out the motion. Well, to me, now I think progress is going to be accelerated on a different scale. And so, yeah, we may be seeing a lot more frequency.
Yeah. Now, don't just take it from me on sort of the video out and how smooth it was. That was the comments from everyone else. So, you know, James Dama noticed that right away. A lot of else. So I was just looking at all these tweets, and everyone's just saying it's remarkable, the coordination that's going on. So that is big. That is very, very big.
Yeah, I feel like the foundation, you know, I think, again, they swagged up this team, what is it, maybe up to 6 months ago, before a year ago. So 18 months ago. Maybe even less than that, but it's one of those things where I think, you know, once they realized that full self-driving was, again, video in, controls out, it's the same exact thing that you can just transition this to something. And also too, it's one of those things where now that they'll be able to launch this, I mean, that would be probably my first question back to the team is like, at what point or where in the factory do we think we're going to start to see this? Or maybe even from Jeff's perspective, like what is the most expensive part of the manufacturing process that they are going to look to tackle? Because I think, again, it's just one of those things that, you know, and I would assume, you know, those parts are probably the most complex. So maybe they hold off on some of those. But wherever there's a lot of friction or the most mundane and time consuming part was probably what they would tackle, at least high level. But, you know, I think the question becomes, obviously, we're probably still a couple of years, maybe even a year away from seeing it actually in the factory, or potentially replacing part of the actual line. But I would love to just have a discussion on like, where do we expect to see this?
I will.
Oh, sorry, Joe. Go ahead.
Well, just real quick, I would say that they are probably looking at injury parts. You know what I mean? And I think they would put it in one of their most dangerous sections first. Some place where you can save people. I mean, Tesla's always been about safety, and I think like that's often overlooked. So I think they would capitalize on that first. But go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I think it's a good point you raise. There's a lot, I think, for people to just understand, there's a lot of people involved with building. If you saw that picture of the Cybertruck and everybody crowded around the first release candidate, a lot of people were commenting like, well, where are these people coming from? And people just think of a factory line. They think of like the people assembling the product on the line. Well, behind the scenes, there's quality inspections that are happening at the component level. There's material sorting that's happening. These are happening in back rooms. There's material sorting. There's material management. There's warehouse management. So these are the areas I would think, and they all have a lot of fairly repetitive motion, especially if you're doing material sorting. And hopefully, with the optics on Optimus, they actually start doing some material inspection, so you can actually get some objective results. I mean, this would be amazing, from my experience, that you put people in a room and say, hey, sort through this material. Unless you have a go no go gauge, if you ask them to measure something, it's going to take forever. But if you can actually measure things pretty quickly with Optimus, and then what kind of sensors are going to be in the hands or the fingers, what can they do with the cameras? I think the material sorting function can actually be taken to a whole new level. That's a lot of headcount. The material management of, these parts, where do they go? These parts need to get kitted up and moved to the line. All of those functions seem to be opportunistic. And then you get to the manufacturing, then the quality inspection piece as well. Again, at the piece part level, I could even see it at the, potentially at the finished goods level. But really, it'd be around repetitive line motion, any kind of repetitive station or task in the manufacturing operation. I mean, those would be the areas I think they would target, and would be this gradient that occurs over time, and it will take years. But things we think like, oh, you'll never replace that with a humanoid robot. I think people are going to be surprised over a number of years what gets replaced.
Yeah, I would say that the first thing I thought of when I saw that Optimus sorting video was Jeff's comments on the show when we saw that Elon Musk memo going out over the tight tolerances that he wanted on Cybertruck and how they could pre-sort parts, just like Jeff was just saying, and put in something that's just smaller than tolerances all in a bin, on tolerances all in a bin, and greater than tolerances all in the bin, and match them with their countertop parts. And that's how you get to those tight tolerances. And then right after Jeff says that, the first video we see from Optimus is Optimus sorting and putting things up on the right side and of different parts. So it does seem like a very opportune time that Tesla actually has a need right now to sort those parts, and they have Optimus trained to sort. So I would be surprised if that wasn't one of the first things we saw Optimus do.
Yeah. So the idea is that I've always had is that Optimus is going to go after what's the low hanging fruit, the very simple operations. And there's a lot of them out there. And my first guess was the idea of the operator loading sheet metal into the spot welding cells. And then sure enough, Elon comes out and actually says that last year when one of the questions is what it's going to do. It's like, well, at first we're going to use it to load the material into our traditional robot welding cells. So that's like one area which is pretty easy. And we've already seen that example out in Shanghai, that if you look at the operator, you can see the speed that's going on there. It's not really fast, but it's very repetitive. It's very boring. The other thing from Isaacson's book is that they mention that they have all these jobs in the factory. They can't keep staffed because people, it's too boring. They quit, which means you constantly have to rehire and rehire and rehire again. But when it comes down to the bottom line, let's really think about how much things cost. I believe the minimum wage in Tesla is somewhere around $25 an hour. $25 an hour for a 40-day work week costs you about $70,000 per year. So that guy who's loading that sheet metal in, and those two stations for just 40 hours a week, that's $70,000. You have 3 shifts, that's $210,000 right there, just to do that right there. So let's not talk about, which is the ones where you're going to get the most cost savings. It's like, all of them are expensive. I mean, they really are. So when you think about it, it's like, oh my God, $210,000 just to do something as simple as that. And then you start looking, well, what about the ones that are the $40 an hour jobs or $50 an hour? Or you start going up there. And then just think about how many stations do you have like that? And very quickly, you start getting into the millions and tens of millions of dollars in cost savings. And then if you, like, again, as Jeff says, you start to go up that gradient and get more and more things. So it won't take long for Optimus to start paying for itself. And I don't mean the electricity that is used to run Optimus. I'm talking about the entire R&D budget to develop Optimus in the first place. So Tesla does not need to sell the bot to actually make money off the bot. It's a penny saved is a penny earned kind of thing here. Eventually they can move it out. All the other humanoid bot manufacturers, they need customers. because it's not going to help. And then it's at some point we want to get into how Optimus is going to be assembled, and having Optimus doing that. We can also go into that discussion, but I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, there were some stats. I think there's been a lot of discussions on the on like the differences between the UAW versus Tesla. I do know that there were some stats out of the Nevada factory that they're making at least $50 an hour, and that excludes a lot of executives. So yeah, I mean, you even take your numbers and double them, you're talking like 420,000 for three shifts, and you're talking the battery factory, which is probably a lot more, I would assume. I mean, just because there's, it's battery, so it's probably maybe more mundane tasks. But again, I don't know, smaller parts, things like that, versus a big car factory. They will obviously be doing the semi out of there, but yeah, no, you're right. It doesn't have to be one specific place. They're going to any specific place that they can stick them in the line and optimize is going to be a huge cost savings. One thing I did want to mention too, back when we were talking about potentially like, whether they're creating the actuators or someone else is, I think it really comes down to, as Jeff was saying too, is it comes down to, obviously, yes, it's going to come down to the cost. It's going to come down to, I think the other part that wasn't really mentioned was the potentially the output, because I think, with lithium refinery and everything else, right, there's certain things that Tesla may try to outsource or get help with. But if there comes a point where there's the amount of supply that or the demand, I guess you could say, if they can't meet the demand because of potentially suppliers, they will step in. That's just their way, right? They'll own the full line. So they may be in a situation. I know Amy called out the company, the supplier in China, but it may be one of those things where they start out with someone, or becomes, they have a partner and then they end up doing it themselves. But yeah, I think it is really, really exciting to see what they're going to be able to do with this bot. They're innovating at a very fast clip, especially in not even a year minus 1 day, as Scott would say. But it's exciting to see what they're doing, because again, it's pretty insane to just think it's like video in, control out. Obviously, there's probably still, that's easier said than done. There's probably still work that they actually have to do with the bot and stuff. But the fact that they have built a system, a software, the neural net, to be able to do that. And obviously we see it every day. If you have full self-driving beta, it's just mind blowing. And now it's not like they just stuck with the car. They're now you're talking, a person walking around, a bot walking around, and the amount of daily tasks or things in the world that this bot can do is going to be pretty ridiculous. Especially, I know Scott was mentioning the cost of this. If they can keep it below 25,000, even if they can drop it even further, this is going to definitely become like a house companion, or something that's really going to be a game changer. But I know we're like 15 minutes past. Did we want to close out with any maybe final thoughts? I don't know. Maybe we could even hand it over to you, Scott, to close us out on like final thoughts on the bot. And then potentially, I know Amy also too, you joined a little bit late, if you had any final thoughts as well on this.
I guess my thoughts is something that sort of came up talking with Herbert this week, of what the bot factory is going to look like for your assembly, because it's pretty simple. Yeah, building the actuators, that's something else, but you're going to have a traditional line for that. But once you have all those components sort of coming in, and you want to assemble the bot out of that, so just think, oh, I've got this kit with all these different pieces, how can I put them together? It's pretty easy, and it's something that I think it can do itself, and do it in a reasonable footprint that can be anywhere. My guess is going to end up in Sparks, but the question is, do they set it up like a traditional assembly line, where you have some sort of central conveyor and then sub-assemblies coming in, where you have other conveyors kind of feeding that in? Or do they go something completely new that's kind of like an unbox method, where you have the bots assembling some of these different subcomponents, because they may have enough dexterity to do it. There may be a few things where you still need some humans doing it. But then the question is, when that sub-assembly is done, what's done with it? Is it put in a buffer somewhere, or is it, kind of put on a conveyor to get down to where it needs to be assembled onto the torso? And I think like, no, when it's done, it's just going to pick it up and walk over there and put it on there, which means you're not going to have a person or something dedicated at that assembly point. And also the other one dedicated building the arms or the legs or whatever limbs you have. Pretty much you build it, then you take it on over there and you put it on there. That's unconventional because we don't do that in a normal factory. We have the division of labor and everyone stays in their lane and that's it. And then we build these conveyance devices because it's more efficient to use a conveyor or a mobile robot. But in this case, it's like, well, why not just have Optimus go over there? And when Optimus goes over there, another one slips in and starts doing his job. So you're going to see them just kind of constantly going around the factory, taking over whatever operation needs to be done. And then you're going to begin to realize that, wait a minute, we're making too many arms right now and not enough legs. Then suddenly they'll kind of go over and start focusing on that to self-balance the whole thing. So I think we're going to see a rather interesting configuration of the factory coming up. And I tried to come up with a name for it. I called it a sofa full of SOBs, where the sofa is like a self-organizing factory automation using self-organizing bots. So we might see something really strange. Whether they go that route right away, maybe they stay a bit conventional because they want to pump the bots out. But eventually you could see something configured like that that will be different than any factory, because you're not, when you think of a human doing that, you look at it a particular way. They're only good at this job. I have to keep them in that job. I can't do anything else. The bot can do anything. And it can slip right in, no context switching. So 1 second, I'm doing something complex, something simple over here. Someone else can come in and take over my job. So those are my final thoughts, is that the factory is going to be wild.
Definitely. Any other thoughts? Otherwise, we can close out. All right. So thank you again for tuning in to the Tesla Beat. This is week 26, which is pretty crazy. We are continuing to roll. But let's give, please patronize Dr. Scott Walter on X. He is Going Ballistic 5, at Going Ballistic 5. So please follow him. His account is in the description or tagged on X, depending on if you're on YouTube or X. And then continue to follow and patronize all of our regular hosts, Jeff at the Jeff Lutz, Joe at Whoman, no, I'm joking, at SJV Tesla, and then Amy at underscore SF Tahoe. I can't speak today. But either way, we really appreciate for everyone tuning in and making this podcast a thing. And we enjoy sitting in your living rooms or potentially just in your earbuds every Friday. So thanks again. We'll see everyone next week. Have a great week.